Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be when you are watching this presentation. My name is Wayne Maury, Group 2. This is the Week 6 content presentation. I hope this presentation finds you well and not too stressed out like I am because this is, I think, the second time I've tried to record this, so hopefully it'll go better this time. So this week we read two chapters in the Casson text. Chapters 9 and 10. 9 was focusing on close relationships, 10 was about helping others. The Chadi text, we looked at chapter 7, which was basically a overview of the social equity theory, and two journal articles, one on social exchange and another on gender roles in altruism. So this week we're looking at social relations. Um, Obviously, we looked at a lot of theories behind social relations, how we relate to others in close and romantic relationships, our attraction to others, and how we attract others to us. And then the helping others chapter and topics, we looked at several different concepts. This presentation, we will focus specifically on the economic perspectives of social exchange theory and social equity theory. And also, we will look at altruism and egoism, the evolutionary reciprocal altruism, and when we tend not to help. So, social exchange theory is conceptualized by a social marketplace between individuals. Um, and basically, it states that we're motivated to maximize our benefits and minimize our costs within a relationship. So, the benefits that social exchange theory is talking about is companionship, feelings of love, social support that we get and give. Actually, the benefit obviously would be the getting of social support. So, when we need to be consoled or when we need to consult others about decisions or emotions that we're having, and then of course, if it is that type of relationship, it would be sexual gratification. Costs in this theory would include time devoted to the relationship, maintaining the relationship, compromises within the relationship, and the foregoing of other opportunities. So, in social exchange theory, more benefits and fewer costs equal more satisfying relationships. Research in this field also indicates that couples that experience an increase in benefits as the relationship progress are actually more likely to stay together. The Leary article that we looked at um, focused in on the rule violations of this social exchange theory, or within the social exchange theory that individuals have. And he found that there can be heavy emotions that stem from the rule violation itself of the exchange theory versus the actual trivial event. And so he stated that the emotions that come from the rule violation are much more than what that event should have realistically elicited. And these explosive overreactions can result in domestic violence, child abuse, and even road rage. So, moving on to social equity theory, I thought it was interesting that social equity theory actually got its foundation and was originally conceptualized to describe employer and employee relationships, and it was just later adapted to explain and describe other relationships. Um, to me, in my understanding, social equity theory is more from an individual standpoint, um, in that um, it's more of each member is looking at what they give and take, versus the exchange theory is more of a overall a we perspective versus a me perspective in social equity. That's just the kind of the takeaway that I got in studying these two. Uh, in equity theory, the equity is receiving benefits equal to their contributions. So relationship satisfaction occurs when the ratio of benefits and contributions are similar between both members. So the over benefited is when one receives more than their contributions, and the under benefited is when one receives less than their contributions. The theory states that whenever there's an imbalance of this benefit ratio, it leads to the relationship being unstable and the members being unhappy. And they describe this because the under benefited can feel angry and resentful, and the over benefited can feel guilty. So, another debate in between this equity, or in the equity theory, is this debate of equity versus equality, or are they equal? So equality is described as both partners benefiting and contributing equally. And some say that equity is not the same as equality, while others say that the relationship can't truly be equitable without there being the equality uh, part of it. So it's kind of an interesting debate that takes long. I think personally it's more of just semantics and the way things are worded, really. Um, so moving on to altruism. Altruism are when people are motivated by the desire to improve other situations and welfare. An altruistic person helps others with nothing in return, in theory. We'll talk about that later. Egoism is the opposite, when people are motivated to improve their own situations and welfare. So the question is, does altruism really truly exist? The people who say no argue from the standpoint that good deeds make people feel good and can improve one's status or reputation. So there's never a time when you don't get something from your good deed or your pro-social behavior. However, the people who say yes, it does truly exist, um, argue that the altruism is actually based in empathy. And in this context, empathy would mean feeling compassion for others when one sees others in distress and imagines how they feel. And then the the empathy altruism hypothesis states that this empathic concern for others that are in need produce the altruistic motive for helping. So the Rand article we looked at looks at social heuristics in altruism, and that's where people internalize pro-social behavior over time. This altruistic behavior, because it's internalized, it becomes instinctive or automatic. He uses the term intuitive, or they do. Intuition can be overridden by deliberation, and that is when people think about the costs and benefits of the behavior. He looked specifically at gender roles and how that played a factor in this intuitive versus deliberation. And he found that women experience more social pressure to behave altruistically, causing a greater tendency to act intuitively altruistic, while men and females, when they have more masculine attitudes, were actually found to deliberate more, which lowered their rates of altruistic behavior. From an evolutionary perspective, reciprocal altruism is when people who help others are more likely to receive help from others. So the Kassentext examples: if A helps B and B helps A, both A and B may increase their chances for survival and reproductive success. So that's obviously a mutual thing that's good for everybody, and obviously the evolutionary part is the survival and the reproductive success. So cooperating is obviously rewarding for both. Um, Surviving longer and reproducing more enables the altruism trait to flourish. And indirect reciprocity is when people helps others, and they're more likely to receive help from other members of the group. So A helps B, C, who saw A helping B, then helps A. And this is a group norm that develops where it's you get rewarded for helping, but yet you are punished for not. So when do we tend to not help? There's a few uh, points that I hit here. The bystander effect is when we are in the presence of others. It tends to inhibit our helping sometimes, and the factors that are related to that are noticing. So, do we perceive the person or the situation at all, or are we just tuning it out? Are we just kind of making it a part of our regular day, or are we used to it and we don't actually notice the person in need? And then, if we do notice how do we interpret it? Do we just interpret them as them being a sleeping drunk, or are they having a heart attack? That's the example the Casson text uses. I think there are some psychological processes that make novel information. We want to make it a part of our normal day. So I think we have a tendency to more see the sleeping drunk, if you will, versus the heart attack. So, and the next part is diffusion of responsibility, where there's so many people witnessing this that I believe that others will help or call for help, and I don't need to. So you have this diffusion of responsibility that happens within a group sometimes. another another thing that can inhibit our willingness to help is time pressure. So if we are too busy, we feel like we have a lack of time, that can produce either failure to notice altogether, less likely to accept responsibility that I need to help, and then of course we look at the cost of time, of losing time, as too high, so we decide not to help. Also, bad moods can have an effect, but only if helping is seen as difficult or stressful, or that if we blame others as the source of our bad feelings, we tend to help less or be less generous. Um, Otherwise, bad moods actually may increase helping, which I thought was interesting. So, in conclusion, all social relations involve some type of give and take. Whether you're helping people or engaging in interpersonal or romantic relationships, we receive benefits and pay costs. Um, Obviously, there are several theories and perspectives that explain our perceptions and motivations behind these. Um, and in this presentation, we just briefly touched on social exchange theory, social equity theory, altruism and egoism, the evolutionary reciprocal altruism, and we looked at when we tend not to help. So I think can be said that all of these principles and theories are interesting. Uh, Pretty sure it can be said that most of them, or at least some of them, are somewhat controversial, and I think we really do need more research in all of these theories. So, with all this in mind, all of our reading, the two questions I'm proposing to the group this week. Number one, do you buy economic perspectives or relationships? What do you think? You think social exchange and equity theories are valid? If so, describe a relationship that you had in which this ratio, the ratios of give and take, were balanced or not balanced, and how this relationship made you feel. If you don't really buy into it, um, describe a relationship experience that you had that would be contrary to what the theories state. And then question number two, as a Christian goal is to help others for the glorification of God, when a Christian engages in altruistic behavior, is it simply conforming to the norms of Christians, like the in group norm, or does the Holy Spirit act on our soul and change our behavior? What role do you feel the Holy Spirit plays in helping people? Thank you very much and have a great weekend.